Hello, I'm State Representative Ron Amstutz from House District 1. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Mike Ditto. Today we have with us State Representative Ron Amstutz, who serves the 1st Ohio House District, which includes all of Wayne County. Representative Amstutz also serves as the chairman of the House Finance and Appropriations Committee. Representative, Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
For those who are not familiar with your service in the legislature, perhaps you could give us a little bit of your background on your public service and tell us a little bit about your district.
Sure. I got interested in serving in the public sector really while I was a journalist many years ago, and that led to 5 years serving Orville as their mayor, and then ever since 81 serving in the Ohio General Assembly in the House and in the Senate, and now back in the House. And so that's a little bit about that. The district actually is set by the Constitution. When the census divides up the state into House districts, the district that is the closest to the magic number, population-wise, becomes House District 1. And that happens to be Wayne County, a single county district.
Congratulations.
Well, I had little to do with that, but that's how it worked out.
That's right. So what are your primary assignments in the House in terms of committees and leadership? Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Sure. My current primary assignment is to lead the House Finance and Appropriations Committee. It's a 31-member committee that has responsibility for the state budget, which is a 2-year plan. The other assignments that I have involve the Ways and Means Committee, which does tax policy, which often shows up in the budget as well, so that you have to balance your revenue stream.
Certainly.
And also I serve on the Public Utilities Committee of the House.
When you're looking at the state budget, you were the chairman of the Finance and Appropriations Committee in the last General Assembly as well. Maybe you could give our viewers sort of maybe a mini history lesson, if you will, on the challenges that you faced in that committee with that budget in the last General Assembly and how it compares to what you are looking at now. We're talking about a massive undertaking with 4,200 plus pages. What have been the differences between the two budgets?
Certainly. Well, the last budget faced a very unusual situation where the state's revenues a few years before had dropped tremendously, and temporary sources of funds were used to keep the budget spending at the level pretty much that it was. And that left us, as those monies were running out in the last budget, faced with balancing a very difficult budget. Generally in the $8 billion range, which was 16–17% of the whole budget, had to be aligned with our revenue stream that was lower than that spending level. And that was accomplished without tax increases, but it was very difficult. And so that was that budget. This budget is unlike that. The good news is we are recovering, and we see a recovering revenue stream, and that's good. And the other thing that's different is it has this budget has some very big proposals in it that are unusual, and we'll probably talk about that as we discuss this
Certainly.
Set of issues.
As we're talking about the budget, obviously that's the most important thing probably happening in the legislature right now. The budget has passed out of the House at this point, and the Senate is currently working on it. One of the items that often comes up in any state budget is how the budget impacts local communities across the state of Ohio. We have 88 counties and a diverse set of people living in each one of those counties. How does the budget affect them, and how does it affect our local governments?
That's a really good question, and it's not one that's immediately understood by the general population. And of course, everybody thinks that the particular bill they're interested in is the most important bill.
Sure.
But in many ways, the budget bill, because it affects all of the taxpayers' revenues and the services that the state provides, is very impactful for the whole state. And it's really doing two major things. As far as the taxpayers' money, it is transferring money back into the community to do two things. Our education systems and our healthcare delivery systems for those who are basically indigent or very low wealth. Those healthcare programs involve nursing homes, hospitals, doctors' offices, and in the area of education, it's primarily our local school systems that the state is funding. Those things represent most of the state budget that's supported by taxpayers, and it is a program that always brings a lot of conversation on how those policies should be set to best meet the needs of our citizens.
Before we get into sort of the major components of the state budget and talk about those on a micro level, there has been an effort on your part and the part of Speaker Batchelder and others in the legislature to sort of open up the Finance and Appropriations Committee process this year. And perhaps you could tell our viewers about some of the transparency initiatives that you've initiated this year.
Well, we did as a team decide that it would be a good project to look at how we do our process so that there would be more opportunity for individuals and groups to participate in that process. In order to accomplish that, we decided that we should employ some technology that's available to us, that all we really needed to do was turn it on.
That's right.
And so we have decided to have a coordinated web presence on the internet so that individuals or groups, again, from pretty much anywhere, can tune in live and see not only the live activity, the hearing process going on through video and audio, but also to access the written testimony and presentation material of the witnesses that are coming before the committee off that website, all in one place. So that is a pretty big change for how we've tended to do things. It not only do they see it live, but they have the opportunity to come back to that because it is persistent. We record that and it is available on demand then later for people that want to go back and review. And I've actually encouraged people to come back and see some of the segments that we've very powerful testimony in the budget making process.
Certainly. Well, let's talk, I guess, then about a few of the sort of what you see as the major issues in this budget. You've talked on a couple of them with health care and perhaps with tax policy and school funding. So perhaps you could share with the viewers sort of your views on what the school funding proposal looks like and how we should be taking a look at that as constituents and taxpayers.
It's interesting in the area of school funding that the last budget was a continuation of sort of a temporary funding arrangement that wasn't completely tracking with anything that was in the revised code in our state law saying how to do the funding.
Right. That
was based on any real plan. And so this budget attempts to insert a plan, install a plan. And we've had a problem with the plans that have been in place in the past ended up in court, then they got changed a lot, but there's been a lot of controversy. The plan that was in place really wasn't being implemented because it was way too aspirational way too expensive, not going to be sustainable. So that got changed out, and so we're searching for something that we can work together on that's sustainable and has a rational basis.
You've talked to a lot of school administrators, teachers, folks involved in the school funding proposals throughout not only this budget but in previous budgets. What has the general reaction been, and even what has the general reaction been among your colleagues here in Columbus on that proposal?
Well, there is a great deal of interest because the budget is what puts their funding stream right in the middle of the conversation. I think the initial reaction was, okay, we have something that we can maybe work with. The administration's proposal had a few places that were maybe not completed and some issues that maybe needed more work. So we focused on those in the House version and I think made progress that was recognized by those stakeholders as being improvements. They're always looking for more improvement, and so that's a work in progress, and I think the Senate will continue to try to develop this, and then we'll try to finish that in the conference committee report. And it's never enough money, even though that's one of the big two areas where new spending is being invested. There is, in the first year, just in the general tax supported area, around $335 million more, somewhere in that range. And there's a little bit of lottery included in that, because that's growing as well at this point. So that's really a lot of new money. and then the other part is in Medicaid. Those are the two big areas where we're spending more money.
Sure.
So the education area is getting investments, and the Medicaid area is getting a big investment too.
And before we talk about Medicaid, which is obviously a huge portion of the budget, one of the things that's been making news lately has been the state's tax policy. And the governor proposed a series of shifts in tax proposals and how the state would operate, typically or primarily the sales tax. What did the House do with the tax proposal, and what do you see as the future of the proposal as it moves through the legislature?
That's a good question. The first thing I want to say is that I think it's helpful for our viewers to understand that because we are recovering with our revenue stream, the proposal actually sort of divides very roughly half and half, with investing money in services and investing money, giving it back to the taxpayers in tax reductions. And the governor's proposal did that. The House proposal does that as well. What is different in the House proposal is that we discovered that there was an effort, in addition to lowering taxes, to also shift the tax burden away from the income tax and more onto the sales tax. The way that was proposed had some problems, and so we decided that we needed to work on that more, and we're in the process of doing that now to try to come up with alternative methods of further reforming our tax code in ways that will help our economy be stronger, but won't create some of the maybe unintended consequences of the original proposal. So we're working together not only with the administration, but with the Senate and stakeholders to see if we can develop a bigger package than what the House passed on to the Senate before we finish the process.
And the House did pass along an income tax cut.
We did.
Could you speak to that?
Yes, we did. I can. We decided to go with a permanent 7% reduction in all the brackets across the state income tax, and that was paid for by totally by the savings that creates a balance in the general revenue fund from controlling spending and from the growth in revenues that's being experienced right now. So those are the two things that pay for that part of the proposal at this time. Now we need to add to that.
On the tax proposals, and you've mentioned previously and on this show that you're working with your colleagues in the House and the Senate to continue working on sort of a broader package of reforms.
Yes.
Do you have a rough timeline set for when that will be accomplished? And excuse me, are you continuing to work with the administration on that?
The answer to both is yes, although it's kind of a work in progress. But I think my expectation would be that we will find some additional things that we can do in sort of this short-run period of time to make this package more impactful. There will be a fair number of things that we identify that need more work that we can't do in the short run, so we'll probably have a second phase project that extends beyond the passage of the budget by June 30. But in the short run, I think we can have a bigger package that will involve the administration and the Senate and stakeholders, and we'll probably have some tensions because whenever you change tax policy, that you don't do that without some controversy.
Sure.
But we want to do it in an even-handed way and in a way that is going to be fair across our various sectors in our economy.
Now we'll probably go to one of the more hotly discussed topics in the last several months, and that is Medicaid. The governor proposed expanding Medicaid to a certain federal poverty level that would add approximately 275,000 to 300,000 more people onto the state's Medicaid rolls, and the House made some changes to that proposal. This all ties into the Federal Affordable Care Act, so I thought maybe it would be a good idea if you could explain to the viewers not only what the House did with the proposal, but sort of where you're looking at moving forward with Medicaid.
Well, that is and will continue to be, I think, the most difficult part of the budget to resolve. And it isn't difficult because of the administration's proposal as much as it is the fact that we have implementation coming on us of the Federal Affordable Care Act.
Right.
And that's a so-called affordable, because I think where we're headed is not so affordable. And I'm very, very concerned about that, and so are many other members of the General Assembly. However, what we're focused on is trying to find a way to find opportunities in the difficulties that we see coming. The original proposal was simply to expand the eligibility of the Medicaid program and basically give an entitlement card to individuals who currently primarily would be those who are single adults who don't have children and are not disabled. And so that was the proposal. It did not go well. There's a lot of concern. So we decided we needed to change the conversation. And that's what we're trying to do now. And I think we're showing some progress in all 4 quadrants, if you will, of the General Assembly. There's 2 caucuses in the House and 2 in the Senate. And we're talking to each other in very small groups to develop common ground. And the new conversation is, well, how can we help folks who maybe are already on Medicaid that have children, as well as those perhaps that aren't eligible now for Medicaid, to move up in their circumstances to the point where they won't need public assistance for health care and other things in the future. That's a very difficult thing to do because many of the barriers that our population of Ohioans are facing are very difficult barriers. We're finding folks that are having mental health problems, sometimes because they've been unemployed. We have individuals who, in too many cases, have become addicted to either alcohol or drugs, and that makes it very difficult for them to live a happy life or be employed. And so these are things that you don't just pass a law and it gets fixed. But we think that we can make some changes to the way. Ohio's making real progress in our Medicaid area. A lot of people don't know this. Already we have made some changes in Medicaid that instead of being an entitlement is more of a managed situation. When you become eligible, there's a private contractor that says, look, what can we do to get you healthier or keep you healthy so that we don't have real expensive medical problems. That's a good model to build on, to try to employ further opportunities for people to improve themselves. And that's really what we're trying to do now. We're starting to have some hearings. We're working on possible program languages that would change the thing from being a Medicaid program to a more of a life plan that people would develop for themselves, and then that there would be private sector and public sector help to, over time, improve their situation.
And on that topic, you're chairing the sort of a subcommittee of the Finance Committee with the Healthier Ohio Working Group, a subset of members of the Finance Committee who are working on this proposal as it is being concurrently worked on by the members of the Senate. Why do you think that this issue of Medicaid expansion, whether or not to do so, is so controversial?
There are several reasons for that, and by the way, I handed off the chairmanship of that to Subcommittee Chair Ann Gonzalez.
Very nice.
But I'm involved as a team in developing this. It's so controversial because there's both philosophical and political differences of opinion on how to go forward.
Certainly.
And that's still left over from the big debate that happened, and actually was very partisan, which was unfortunate at the federal level on the Affordable Care Act. So the tax increases and the fees and fines that are coming online, I believe are going to be very, very controversial next year, and folks see that as a problem. So they're very resistant to anything that sort of aids and abets the intrusion of that act, even though it's law. So we have to find ways to make lemonade out of that.
That's right. And
so that's where the common ground maybe can be. So it's very, philosophically, some people, and I'm one of those, feels that we're reaching a point where we're running out of other people's money, and that's the problem with socialism. And frankly, it's hard to say it that way because that's kind of a hard word, but that's our country has crept further and further into that mode, and it is really threatening the future for our children and grandchildren, and we need to address that. Now, there are many other programs that are federally funded that the state participates in, so we need to be honest about the fact that we're all in this problem together, but we need to start figuring out how to get out of it, and that involves the people of the state of Ohio finding ways to change our culture. And a very difficult thing to do. It won't be done by state government, but we're a partner in that, and we have a responsibility to help lead that.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate you joining us here and talking about the ins and outs of the state budget. Undoubtedly a complex issue that hopefully once the Senate does their work and the House works on the final passage of the state budget by the end of June, you'll come back and join us and tell us what the final product looked like and if there's anything more that our viewers should know about.
Our state did great welfare reform in 1995 ahead of the federal government. It was very bipartisan, and that's the model we're going to focus on running again.
Wonderful. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing each one of you back here again next time on the next edition of Ohio in Focus. We want to thank our esteemed colleague and chairman, Ron Amstutz of the House Finance and Appropriations Committee. And thanks again for joining us here on Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. We look forward to seeing you here again next time.